Simple, as in simple servants. I was like,
No,
who
no,
the
you're
fuck-
good, you're good. I wasn't
that-
sure
I
if
don't
the
want to do
password
that.
worked. I wasn't sure if the password
Oh,
worked.
let's see.
Say no?
On. You're awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Just put this right here. You did, and I just. Right. I'll try to get your badge. All right. Hey, we're doing science, right? Yes, science. Work stuff, Maddie.
Guys, does one of you have the hand mics? Yes. Does one of you have the hand mics? Hello.
It's gonna open in a second.
All right, everyone, if we can all settle down. Dr. George is about to start. Of course, we would like to thank him for being here. He came all the way from California just for us. If we can give him a round of applause. Thank you. So, again, like the biggest thank you. Most of us here, if you were, when the youth groups first started, one of the very first things we have done together, that was like 2 years ago, what brought the group together was Dr. George's book. And we used to meet in Abuna's office, small group, where we would just read it until the group finally kept growing, and then we would slowly read parts of it. And then finally we got the blessing of having him here with us last year. And then this year, second time with us. Last year was amazing. It was we got to learn so much, and we did Q&A and everything. If you didn't hear last year's lecture, it was the introduction about God's existence and so on. If you didn't hear it, I encourage you to go check it out. And then this year, Dr. George is going to continue it. But before he starts, I would like, if it's okay, to kind of tell us a bit about your background and what got you into apologetics and so on.
Sure. Thank you, Myrna. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. So should I? Is it too much to ask to be on one side, or I don't mean to. Good. How are you? Just so that I can be with you guys. One side is probably better. La la la. How are you? Good to see you again. Wow, I'm so happy. Marina, it's good to see you guys. I feel like I'm with my family now. Hello.
We missed you.
How are you? Miss you too. All right. In the name of the Father and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. First of all, I have to say that I am thrilled to be with you again, and I mean this sincerely. I'm very happy to be with you. I had a wonderful time with you it was last year. I think March of last year. It was an amazing time for me. I missed you since then, and when Myrna called or texted and wanted to see if we can do a repeat, no hesitation. I said, absolutely. I love the youth of St. Paul, and you guys are awesome. So I'm so happy to be with you. I mean this. I don't say this in every conference I go to, by the way. You can check. You can look on YouTube and you see. I don't say this to everyone. I mean it. I'm so happy to be with you. I miss Abuna Stephen and you guys. And I remember many of you feel like I'm back with my family, as I said. So I'm honored to be with you this weekend and take your blessings. Yes, me too. So let me give you a quick overview of what we will cover this weekend, and I hope to see you throughout. So as you can see on the screen, this evening we will discuss, I think, a very relevant topic: Christianity and science. Are they friends or are they foes? Enemies or allies? So we'll discuss that. And God willing, correct me if I'm wrong, Myrna. God willing, I have the schedule here. So God willing, tomorrow morning we will discuss God in the Old Testament, and how God seems to be cruel and vicious and monstrous God in the Old Testament, with all the killings and all of that. And did God change? And how can we understand the events that took place in the Old Testament? And then we will discuss a very important subject: doubt. What do we do? How do we deal with doubt? The sources of doubt. Do we ever doubt the existence of God or the truthfulness of our faith and all of that? Then we will have a lecture, but that's not for you. The last lecture on Saturday will be for the moms and dads, for the parents, I believe. And that is how to protect our children from the plague or the pandemic of atheism. Questions when they come from my child, my son, my daughter. They're asking me questions about the faith. How do I practically deal with that? And we'll have some practical tips and tricks. That's tomorrow evening. Of course, you're welcome to attend. On Sunday?
Would we be able to apply it as servants as well?
Of course, servants as well. Actually, more so for servants. I'm assuming servants are also parents. So it's open for both. And then on Sunday, Sunday, another very important subject, which is can we trust the Bible? Or how do we know that the Bible that we have is the divinely inspired Word of God? Or is it just a collection of some ancient literature and it's man-made? So very important subjects throughout the weekend. And of course, we're gonna have time for, as you suggested, Myrna, for Q&A. So time for you guys to just ask away. Whatever question comes to mind, please. There are no wrong questions or stupid questions or anything like that. Ask away, and if you don't want to ask in public, you can. I'm hoping they have the ability to write their questions down, and then we can collect them. Sounds good? Sounds like a plan? Well, I see you the whole weekend, Mishkira, I hope? Good. And if you have any questions as I am speaking, please interrupt. I don't mind interruptions whatsoever, just as long as it's relevant to what we're discussing, okay? Okay, Myrna asked, how did I get into apologetics? I'll try to make this very short. So my background, I was born and raised in Egypt. My father is a priest. He's in heaven now. His name is Abuna Bassilios. He was the priest of El Botroseya Church. I'm sure many of you have heard of the church for obvious reasons. So I grew up in that church in Egypt until I was 12 years old, and then I left Egypt when I was a little kid. And I've been in San Francisco since for a long, long time. And back in the year 1999 or 2000, 22 years ago, I got involved in the field of apologetics, defending the Christian faith. And I really have to give credit to two mentors. My spiritual father, Al-Amba Yusuf, who's also my mentor, my spiritual guide, and Abuna Dawood Lamai, who both of them encouraged me to get into the field of apologetics. Why so? Because my background is in philosophy and psychology. So I like critical thinking and argumentation, not arguing, argumentation, and so on. So I delved into that field of critical thought and all of that, and I wanted to kind of marry philosophy with Christianity. And philosophy, after all, as the term implies, is the love of wisdom. So I wanted to read more on philosophy and Christianity and so on, and that got me into the field of apologetics. And they both encouraged me to kind of delve into it. That's 20 years ago, when I don't think a lot of people knew what apologetics even mean back then. But Abuna Dawood and Sayyidina Al-Amba Yusuf, they had a vision, futuristic vision in the future, that this will probably be a needed field in the future. And sure enough, in this day and age, I think apologetics is essential to every Christian because of all the challenges that we're dealing with in our culture, the questions that come our way from our colleagues, from our friends, from within us, all kind of challenging questions. And we're going to talk about those current challenges and how do we deal with them as Christians in this world. Let's get into the subject at hand, Christianity and science. Some believe that science is the only, we'll probably, if you have the remote and you can make it not wide, but yeah, thank you, perfect. Thank you so much. Some believe that science has become our greatest endeavor, or only endeavor, to attain and discover truth. If I don't see it, if I don't feel it, then it doesn't exist. I am a man or a woman of science. And science is my only channel or vehicle to get to truth. And here's a picture that will delineate what I'm saying. If it's scientific, it's fact. If it's religious, it's fiction. You see? That's kind of the mood of our culture. True or false? That's the, especially nowadays, well, a couple of years ago, when the word science, trust the science was almost in every, back during COVID times, trust the science. Remember that? I mean, it's all about the science. Don't worry, put God aside, and it's all about the science. Trust the science has now become our God, our man-made God. So we're talking about science and faith, or science and Christianity. Before I begin discussing any subject, I'd like to first define our terms so we know what we're discussing. We're on the same wavelength as far as definition. So what is science? What is science? Now, I'm not a scientist. I do philosophy. So I like to use excerpts from scientists on how they defined science. What did scientists say about science? Let's look at geneticist John Klotz, and you can see the credentials. I'm not going to go over the credentials of everyone, but these are scientists that have invested their life, basically, in science. And I will be using a lot of excerpts or quotations from scientists for credibility purposes. Okay? I'm not going to say, well, I think I heard, or my next door neighbor said, or anything like that. These are people that have credibility and authority in their field. Okay? So what did John Klotz says? He said, science deals with only with the natural, with things that can be apprehended by the senses, and it deals with these things that can be measured. That's basically the definition of natural or physical science. So three things. Science deals with three things. What are they? That which is natural, within the natural world, physical, within the creation. Science cannot deal with the metaphysical. Science cannot say, I feel that that God hears my prayers, or things like that. Nothing metaphysical science can touch. And science can only deal with things that are apprehended by the senses, by my sight, my taste, my touch, and all of that. And then science deals with things that can be measured and quantified. That's it. What did the dictionary say about definition of science? It's the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the natural world, observation and experiment. Basically the same thing that John Klotz had said about science. So with this definition of science, I'm going to ask you this question. Are there any limitations or limits to science given that definition? What are they? Yes, you nodded first. Yes? So if it deals only with the natural, only that can be apprehended by the senses, and only that can things that can be measured, that's the definition of science. So the limitations of science would be that which is exactly that which is supernatural, metaphysical, and that cannot be quantified and measured. Right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just got a little bit
No worries, no worries. Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot. But what else? Give me examples. Yes, sir.
The limits of science. Oh,
Oh, you're ready.
the limits of science would be anything that can't be, I guess, interpreted through the scientific method.
Perfect.
That's, yeah.
And what? Okay, very briefly, the scientific method.
You break down. You have a hypothesis. You test a hypothesis.
Perfect. Through repeated experimentation and observation.
Yep.
That's the scientific method. And there's deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, but we don't want to get into the details of it. But that's pretty much the scientific method in short. Anything beyond that is not science. Right? Perfect. What else? Yes.
bias, I guess, because like each scientist has their own theory and that they just try to use empirical evidence to support it.
Perfect.
But that doesn't mean that it's actually real.
Excellent. I love what you said. We're going to get to that in about 10 minutes. Beautifully said. Yes. We're going to answer the question. Yes, sir.
So one limitation would be like emotion, something that is emotional or spiritual, something you can feel but you can't touch.
Absolutely. Your feelings are not scientific because you cannot quantify them. You cannot say, this is how much I feel angry or joyful. Yes. No worries.
I actually believe emotions are much more quantifiable than we actually think. What I mean is that, for example, so like the New York Times released this like study where they were talking about like how people feel like, let's just say, in their middle age and they haven't committed yet in any sort of relationship. And when they keep on collecting evidence, and there is continuous like evidence where that supports the idea that if you have not been in a committed relationship by the time you're like 45, 46, then you find yourself completely lost. You can find yourself through depression and so on. So I actually believe this. I guess maybe I am also like, I'm a Christian, so when you hear that stuff, you feel, oh, look, that supports the stuff that's said in the Bible, that you need to like have a relationship that's like you should like that anything outside of the marriage between a man and a woman and
Right.
that's something long lasting isn't survivable. So there could be also my bias, but at the same time, I have found that like, wait, no, these people like through their emotions have determined a very good like conclusion
Sure.
that has like been empirically almost like
Excellent. Now,
identified.
let me clarify. The emotion itself cannot be quantified. It's the effect thereof. You see? It's the difference between cause and effect. The actual emotion cannot. But what does the emotion do in my heart, in my will, in my actions? That can be measured. Do you see? That's the difference between emotions and the effect thereof. So there are limits to science. Let me give you some of those. Science is limited to that which is observed with the five senses. And this is what George Simpson, professor of Harvard, noted as the most influential paleontologist of the 20th century. What did George Simpson say? It is inherent in any acceptable definition of science. By the way, all of these people that I am using as reference are not Christians. Just so that you don't think, oh, well, they're saying this because they're Christians. These are skeptics, agnostics, atheists, but they are true to their science. فاهمين قصدي? To add more credibility to what they're saying. It is inherent that in any acceptable definition of science, that statements that cannot be checked by observations are not really about anything, or at the very least, they're not science. Observation, I can observe and see. What else? Second limitation. Science is limited in that it cannot evaluate morals. Science cannot say anything that has to do with morals. Love, hate, courage, cowardice, all of these virtues and vices, science is silent. Silence cannot say you should love, you should not love, or you should be courageous, or anything of that sort. What did Jack Monod, also a Nobel Prize winner, scientist, he said, science is ignorant of values. There is nothing inherent in the scientific method that provides for the definition or study of morals. Cannot say anything about morals. What else? Another limitation of science, last limitation, by John Hawthorne, professor of metaphysical philosophy of the University of Oxford. He said, science is limited in that it cannot make aesthetic judgments. Science cannot look at the painting of Mona Lisa and say, this is beautiful, or this is ugly. Anything aesthetic, science is silent on. It cannot say, oh, this is so beautiful, or this is so ugly. Science cannot tell us whether a music piece is beautiful or dreadful, or so and so on. Blaise Pascal, I think, summarized the limitation of science in the following quote. Blaise Pascal is a famous scientist. I think I have a chapter in my book, Timeless Truth, on Blaise Pascal, and he came up with the Pascal's wager. Yes, thank you. Very good. Yes, Pascal's wager. He said, listen to what he said, which I thought was very beautiful. Knowledge of physical science will not console me for ignorance of morality in time of affliction, but knowledge of morality will always console me for ignorance of physical science. Okay? When times are tough in my life, afflictions and trials and tribulations, my knowledge of science is not going to help me. But my knowledge of what morals and values and the metaphysical will help me. You see? So, questions that science can answer. Questions like when, what, where, how many, by what means, how much. These are questions that science can provide an answer for. What are the questions that science cannot answer? What am I here? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? Is this the right thing to do? How valuable am I? What is the value of my life? Does God exist? Does God hear my prayers? Do miracles occur? In other words, the more essential questions of life, science is silent on. You see? I want to move to, I'm gonna do my best, because science and faith, science and religion is a 3-week course. So I'm gonna do my best to be as concise as possible. So I'll move a little quick so that I can cover as much as I can in 3 minutes or so. Science was actually a foundation, or Christianity, I should say, was a foundation for modern science. How so? Let me share with you some quotes from scientists that claimed this very truth, that Christianity was a foundation for modern science. Someone like Melvin Calvin, this another Nobel Prize winning biochemist, awarded the National Medal of Science in 1989. He said, I find this basic notion discussed 2,000 or 3,000 years and enunciated first in the Western world by the ancient Hebrew, namely that the universe is governed by a single God. This monotheistic view seemed to be the historical foundation for modern science. Now this guy, I mean, read up on Melvin Calvin. He's not a theist. He doesn't believe in God, but he realized that without God, you cannot do science, and I will prove it to you in a second. Here is another quote by Lauren Harsma, and you can see the credentials there. A Christian does not have to pretend to be an atheist to do science. I love that first statement. A Christian does not have to pretend to be an atheist to do science. Science arises naturally from a Christian worldview. Christianity is not a separate realm from science, but provides a fundamental what? Foundation for how and why we do science. A scientist does not have to be a Christian to do science, but they must hold this subset of worldview assumptions. And then that's a question for you. What are the assumptions, al-iftiradat, that the scientist must hold for them to do science? And these assumptions point to the existence of God. ايه هي الافتراضات اللي الساينتست بيفترضها قبل ما بيعمل الساينس بتاعه? What are these assumptions? The world was created. بلاش how. It was, the world had a beginning and it was created. That's an assumption. But then again, the question is, as you said, how was it created? So you do, as a scientist, believe that the universe has a beginning and it was created. What other assumptions? Yes, sir.
The universe has its laws that
Perfect.
go by.
That's what I was looking for. Say it again. Got excited for a second. Malish.
So the universe has its own laws that we know and go by and understand.
Exactly. The laws of physics, the laws of nature. Where did they come from? Because every law must have a lawgiver. Where did the laws of physics, the laws of nature, that science is basically based on? If there are no laws of nature and laws of physics, gravity and all of that, will you be able to do science? Nope. So you assume that these laws exist, and these laws are what? Rational and knowable. Not just exist, but I can comprehend these laws and work with these laws. And the universe is what? Rational and orderly. What else? Other assumptions. One more. Yes. Okay, I'll share with you some. Number one. There you go. What's your name again? Bishoy, Habibi. All right. The laws of nature. That we have free will to make decisions and follow the evidence. Because as a scientist, you must assume that you're free to follow the evidence where it leads and make a decision. You're not programmed, as atheists claim. By the way, I have a video I can share with you later. A video of Richard Dawkins. And I mentioned Richard Dawkins extensively last time we met. Do y'all remember him? The most vocal, aggressive atheist out of Oxford. When he was asked, do you have free will? What did he say? Absolutely not. And here's the expression he coined. We are moist robots. You can look it up. يعني احنا كلنا ايه? Moist robots. What a beautiful thing. What a wonderful thing. Makes you feel so valuable. We are, and he also says something else. We are molecules in motion. يعني we are programmed متبرمجين كده to do this and to say this, to act this way, to think this way. We're not free. We're determined. But wait a minute. As a scientist, you assume that you have free will to follow the evidence. What else? We can make rational inferences as a scientist. Where did this reason come from? And lastly, You assume objective moral values because you also assume that you should report your results accurately and honestly. Where did this accuracy and honesty come from? And so many other assumptions that, as Dr. Hars said, a scientist must hold on to these assumptions. You had a question? Yes.
Because I think the outliers, let's just say like when someone is sick, really ill, but like I don't know, I think it's a bit of a simplistic view, but like say
Absolutely. And that's a question mark that many scientists could not or do not have an answer for. And I'll prove it to you. When they're asked about that, which, again, you can see that those outliers that you mentioned. Let me share with you, remember, we're talking about Christianity as a foundation for modern science. مش كده? Let me share with you some disciplines in science and who are the advocates or the champions of these disciplines. Here's an image that cannot be, oh man. Can you see them? No, you can't. I can't see them either. Anyways, people like, well, let me show you this picture. Okay? I think you may recognize some of these people. Kepler, Newton, Boyle, and Faraday, and all of these scientists, what do they all have in common? They're all theists. They do believe in God. طب ممكن تقول yeah, but these people were يعني back in the days in the 1800s, 1900s. Well, I have news for you. Now, these are modern day scientists. And here are their credentials. You can see Professor Walter is a mechanical engineer, and Dr. Miller, Texas A&M, Williams, and you can go through all of these. These are actual professors, scientists that are theists and believers in Christ, Christianity. And more to be said about Christianity as foundation for modern science, and you study history and you'll find that out. But I want to go over a third point. What is science? The limitation of it, and Christianity as foundation for science. The third point I want to share with you is the following. Atheists who actually came to believe in God through their science. Atheist scientists who through their science became believers. Now, what is the difference between atheists who study science and remain atheists and atheists who study science and become believers in God? Because there are two camps. Not every scientist, obviously, that studies science becomes a Christian. Many remain atheists. What is the difference? Now, I want you to tell me. That's the effect. What's the cause? Why? Proof that God doesn't exist? Okay. Yes, sir. Beautiful. But what else? Yeah, you're close. Yes. But why? Yes, they didn't. Why? They're scared of being wrong? Yes, but why else?
Science is limited, so therefore they couldn't like support it in a scientific way, so they believe there's
Okay. Okay. Why else?
because their lifestyle is a certain way and they don't want to change?
Yes, they don't want to change their lifestyle. They're scared of the truth. But you know why else? And I have a little video clip that I will share with you that will explain exactly why. From an atheist scientist. Here's the difference. Those atheists that did their science and remained atheists have brought their assumptions into their science. They assumed that God doesn't exist, and they tried to basically interpret their scientific studies to fit their assumptions. I know that God doesn't exist, and I am going to study science, and whatever that is that I'm doing, whatever results I have, I will make it fit into my conclusion. Now that's philosophically, that's wrong. There's a fallacy. You don't assume that which you're trying to prove. But those atheists who got into science with no bias, no preconceived notion, they're basically saying, you know what, I'm just going to follow the evidence wherever it leads. They found that science point to the existence of God. And that's why I'll share with you what Mr. McGrath, one of my favorite authors, this guy is a genius. He has half a dozen PhDs, no exaggeration, from Oxford University. Alice, and whatever he writes is just great. He's a historian, theologian, scientist, and apologist, and all kind of stuff. As a professor of science in Oxford University, he debated Richard Dawkins, and he's just an awesome intellectual author. He said, most of my atheist colleagues brought their assumptions about God to their science rather than basing them on their science. Do you see the difference? And that's why I say, if you're genuine in seeking the truth and you do your science, it will point to the truth. But if you're doing science to fit your preconceived conclusion, of course you can interpret your findings however you want, because of what you said beautifully, because they're afraid of the what? The truth. Because the truth will expose them, because they would not want to change their lifestyle. Yes, sir. Bishoy.
So a good summary to have is basically the biased scientists that are atheists remain that way because of their bias, and the ones that didn't were likely because they're not biased.
That's what Alistair McGrath said, and that's what I would concur. Absolutely. And I'll tell you why I say that, the reason for science. But before I do that, I want to share with you some quotes that I think I skipped. Atheists, remember atheists who became believers because of science? I'll just share with you some excerpts and quotations. Interesting ones. Dr. James Tour, this guy, he has all these credentials. He's, does a lot of things with science. He says, I build molecules for a living. I mean, not a lot of people can say that. This guy builds molecules for a living. I cannot begin to tell you how difficult that job is. I stand in awe of God because of what he has done through his creation. Remember, these were atheists who became believers because of their science. Only a rookie who knows nothing about science would say science takes away from faith. If you really study science, it will bring you closer to God. Werner van Braun also is a rocket scientist and a lot of other things. He said, my experience with science led me to God. Some challenge science to prove the existence of God. But listen to what he says. Must we really light a candle to see the sun? Which I think is beautifully said. And also Francis Collins, he said basically the same thing. But you know what's interesting? I'll tell you something personal. I would be in a conversation on a college campus with someone, or a conference like this, and I find مثلا a youth who took physics 101 for a semester, or biology 101 for a semester, and they think they are what now? Scientists. I took science for 3 months and I got an A plus. I now know what I'm talking about. I'm not joking. You think this is a joke? I've seen it. And when I ask them, how long have you been taking science for? I say, I took it last semester. Now we're talking about people who have invested 30, 40 years of their lives doing science. Which is more credible? That's all I have to say. You see? I'm not saying, again, we follow people blindly. But when you look at what they have done and you look at the consistency and the pattern, then we must give some credence to what they say. I'm not sure if the video will play, but I'll try my best. Oh, it didn't play. Okay. Malish, we'll skip. So, question for you. Has science disproved God? It can't. I love what you said. Why?
Because God is not measured.
I love it. Exactly. Because remember what we said about science? That which can be observed, that's within nature, and that can be quantified or measured. But God is not within nature. He is supernatural, metaphysical, and he cannot be quantified. You cannot put God in a test tube. Yes. Sure. Excellent question. What makes you think he didn't? Because there are conflicting theories about Hawking, especially towards the end of his life. No, that's not Hawking. That's Dawkins. Stephen Hawking wrote a book called A Brief History of Time. And he concluded that the universe began in time. And he was pointing to the attributes of the beginner of the universe. These attributes are very similar to the attributes of the Lord Jesus Christ. That's Stephen Hawking. But Richard Dawkins, which one are you referring to?
No, Hawking. I know that he was
Sure.
I know it's Hawking because Hawking's story is because Hawking's story is really fascinating. I don't remember all the specific terms of whatever he suffered from, but he still managed to be the greatest scientist.
Right.
And
Yes, but I would advise you to read his or watch his videos and read his articles towards the end of his life. You probably watched the movie The Theory of Everything. That's the movie.
No, but then I actually read a little bit more about it because I was so shocked. I was after I watched it, I was wait.
Yeah, let me clarify, because I've studied Hawkins extensively. Throughout his life, he was an anti-theist. Yes. Towards the end of his life, his views were dramatically different, to the point where many of his atheist followers denounced him and rejected him, because his views began to point to the existence of a creator. That's why many believe that towards the end of his life, he actually became a theist. But again, within the atheist community, that's not something you're gonna, see on CNN. So I would advise you to listen to what he said towards the last couple of years of his life.
Because I remember I did listen to the stuff that he said at the beginning of the 2000s. I remember that, and I think he was still very strong.
Yeah, no, listen to, like I said, the last couple of years. And that was when he was aggressive about atheism.
Yeah, I know.
No, interesting perspective on that. But science cannot disprove God, as we heard, because God cannot be quantified. Why else? For you to disprove the existence of something, you must be what? Okay, it's assumed you exist. Think philosophically. Yes, sir. Observe it and measure it. Yes. But if you say, let me explain. Let me give you an example. If I say, I can prove to you that in this entire universe, there is no stone that is 3 inches by 5 inches that has yellow dots on it. What did I really say? What am I implying? Exactly. I have omniscience. You know what omniscience means? كلي المعرفة. I know everything. And I have looked at the entire, looked throughout the entire universe. And I did not leave any stone unturned, as they say, to make sure that there's no stone with this description. So when you say, I can prove to you the non-existence of something, you automatically are assuming that you know everything. For you to say that there's a being who knows everything doesn't exist. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes, sir.
It exists because
Perfect.
arguing about
That's another philosophical twist to it. And I always say this. If there was no God, there would be no atheists. If God didn't exist, you wouldn't have any atheists. Because you can ask the atheist this simple question. And who are you denying? Can you deny the non-existence of something? And we can talk about the unicorn analogy and a lot of other analogies, but you're absolutely right. Let's move on, as I want to share with you a few other things. Now let's get into the real purpose of science. Now we discussed the limitation of science. What is science? The limitation of science. Science as Christianity as foundation for modern science. And we also said or discussed atheists who became believers through their genuine study of science. Now let's discuss this question. What is the real purpose of science? Now let's add بقى احنا كفاية theological discussions. Let's make it some practical. What is the real purpose of science? I say that science is a tool given to us by God as a window into His creation. So you can look through science into the creation of the Lord. That is what science is, basically like a telescope. You look through it, you don't look at it. You look through it so that you can see the splendor and the glory of God. And here is the verse, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows His handiwork, Psalm 19. And this is another verse in Romans 1 that says, since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly, that's my favorite word, clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. In other words, the fingerprints of God are all over this universe. And here is a picture that I think will summarize everything for you. Why do I believe that science and faith, or science and Christianity, are not at odds or contradicting one another? Because they have the same author. And the same author cannot contradict himself in this case. God, He's the author of the scripture, God's word. God is also the author of nature, God's world. God's word and God's world cannot contradict one another because they have the same author. Where's the problem? The problem is right here. Actually, I have it in the next slide. There you go. It's the interpretation thereof. Science, I would say, is infallible. You're going to say, George, you're crazy. No, I'm not. Science is. Scientists are not. Science as science, it is the creation of God. If you study it genuinely, it will point to its creator. But if you study it to fit your conclusion, then of course, because you're not infallible, you are fallible. But if you study it genuinely, it will point to its creation. Because the main goal of science is to study physical reality. The main purpose of theology is to study spiritual reality. The problem with heretics and heresies and wrong teaching and all that is because we interpret in a way that is not consistent with the author. Here's another picture. I say the following. Atheist scientists who deny the existence of God are much like an auto mechanic who works on a car engine while denying the existence of Henry Ford. Because if there's no Henry Ford, there's no car. And if there's no car, there's no engine. What are you working on? If there's no God, there's no universe. If there's no universe, there's no nature. If there's no nature, what are you studying? You see? I'll give you another example. Someone who loves Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Excel, and loves Microsoft, and does all kind of stuff on Microsoft with Microsoft. VBA command with Microsoft. And then he even says, he markets for Microsoft. Yet he denies the existence of Bill Gates, for example. Well, if there's no Bill Gates, then there's no Microsoft. If there's no Microsoft, what are you working on? Do you see? So scientists, by virtue of them being scientists, they are indirectly proving the existence of God. Yes, sir? Mm-hmm. Okay, balash Bill Gates. Henry Ford, have you seen him? You just have to take it by faith that he existed.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah. All right,
Okay.
you won that.
I want that. That's not the point is not to win or lose. The point is for you to think of the fact that there must be someone behind that nature that I'm working on. Forget that example. Okay, let's go back to this one. That's much better. Yes.
I kind of agree with what he's saying. Like,
Who's he?
I don't know
Okay.
his name. But okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But like, if you really think about it, with atheists, they don't believe in God. So I feel like that argument, at least for what I think, isn't really like, I don't know, for the people I like talk to, I can't really use that with them because they just don't believe in God at all. So like a car and a mechanic and Henry Ford, like we all know about Henry Ford because like we learned about him in school. Yeah, we learn about like Christianity and God in school too. But if they don't believe that's there, then it's like hard to really.
But
Like,
how do you
say
believe?
that-
How do you believe that Henry Ford existed?
I mean, we see a Ford Automotive.
Yeah, but what if just? But that, you see Ford Automotive that points to Henry Ford.
Uh-huh.
Well, you see miracles, you see morals, you see design in the universe, you see origin of life. That
Well,
should point
we
to
see
God.
that.
Hmm?
But like atheists, they just don't believe in God at all.
Perfect. Then you don't want to use that example if this example is way too advanced for an atheist to come to the knowledge of God, but use other examples. Such as questions, and I think I mentioned these questions to you last time we met last year. Questions, very fundamental questions. Where did the universe come from? Just-
Well, I mean, they'll say the Big Bang.
Excellent. Who banged the Big Bang?
They don't know that. But see, you can say God, but once again, it's like they don't believe that. So like we
Well,
know it's God. I know it's God.
But there's a question that you have to get an answer to. Have an answer for, rather. How? Why is there something rather than nothing? And this question, what's your name?
Clara.
Clara. I'll ask you this question. I'll tell you this, Clara. So, some people went, or actually, this is on YouTube. You can look it up. Someone went to Richard Dawkins. You've heard of him. The greatest atheist existing now. And they asked him the simple question. Where did the universe come from? He said, I don't know. He said, Dr. Dawkins, you gotta give me an answer. You know what he said? Aliens created this universe, and I don't know where they came from. In other words, these are questions, Clara, that are existential in nature, that you must have an answer for. As an atheist, you have to ask yourself this question: where did the universe, where did life come from? And that question was also asked to atheists. And you know what they said? We don't know. The first life, where did it come from? Because there's a law in science that's called the law of give me just 1 second. 1 second. There's a law in science called the law of biogenesis that says life can only come from another life source. Excellent. Where did that first life source come from? Atheists don't have an answer for that question. And I challenge, but let's challenge. I'd had hundreds of conversations with atheists on college campuses, and I asked them these questions, and they have no answer for it. So forget the example of Henry Ford or Microsoft or all that. Simple, Fundamental basic questions. Where do morals come from? Do they come from society? Do they come from evolution? Do they come from human reason? So there are questions, Clara, and I think I mentioned to you all 20 questions last year we met. If you remember, 20 questions that I have asked atheists throughout the past 22 years, and I haven't found a coherent answer for these questions yet. You see? So, and again, I'm trying to say one thing. We as, and I'll tell you the story, I'll repeat it again. I know I shared it with you, Malish, and I'll share it with you one more time. I was on a college campus, and I was given a lecture about the existence of God. And some students, along with their professor, they came to the podium after I was done, and they said, we don't believe anything you said, because we're atheists. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you some questions after everyone had left. I said, where did the universe come from? We had a conversation first. And they said, well, we don't know yet, but eventually we'll find out. Cosmologists are working on that. And then I said, okay, simple. Second question, where did the first life come from? They said, well, there are symposiums of the origin of life in Oxford University, and they're working diligently to find out how that first life came to exist. We don't know yet. Eventually we'll find out. I said, my friends, it seems to me that you live by faith because you don't know the answers to these questions. And there was silence. I said, I also live by faith, but I have answers for these questions that are intellectually coherent. Would you like to know? And then they left. So what I mean to say is, we have answers to the most fundamental existential questions of life. Atheists don't. And I'm not saying atheists don't because I'm falsely blaming them. Read Sam Harris, read Richard Dawkins, read Daniel Dennett, read Christopher Hitchens. These are the most vocal atheists nowadays. They don't have answers for these questions. And when they do, they're ridiculous answers, like aliens. Really? The interviewer was compassionate on Dr. Dawkins, did not want to even ask further questions. He said, really? Aliens? Where did that come from? Oh, I don't know. Yes, sir.
When she asked, like, where did the universe come from? So there's this, I actually read this from your book, that matter cannot be created or destroyed.
Yes.
And so, like,
according
the
to Jasper.
universe, like the matter that created the universe must have come from like nothing, which is like metaphysical.
Exactly.
Right there.
Exactly.
So
Perfect.
that's just like a really good argument.
Perfect.
That.
Perfect. Or you could say anything that exists or everything that exists can be classified into two things: matter or mind, and mind. مش كده? Matter and mind. One gave rise to the other. Either matter created mind or mind created matter. One must have preceded the other. But we know that matter had a beginning. And we know that science had conclusively proved that matter had a beginning. Therefore, mind must have preceded matter. And that mind, Christians refer to as the Logos, according to John 1:1. Yes, sir?
For me, like, being an atheist is like a really weird idea, because what's harder to what's easier to believe, that there was like an infinitely small dot that created this entire universe, or God just made everything?
Beautiful. Yes. That's why if you use logic and reason, it will point to the existence of God. Let me move on. What does the word science? Oh wow. Hna, where's Mirna go? Okay, when are we supposed to finish? Oh my goodness. Okay. طيب, can I get 4 minutes of your time, and I'll be quick. 4 minutes. 4 minutes real quick. There's so much, again, I wanted to share with you, but I want to be respectful of your time as well. So what does science mean? You know what science means? In Latin, scientia means what? In Arabic, it's actually even better. Al-ilm. What does it mean? Knowledge. To know. Scientia means to know. Science means to know. So here are some contrasting verses. They seem contradicting to one another. The verses on the left, it is not good to be without knowledge. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So these verses call for what? We need to pursue knowledge. Now look at these verses. 1 Corinthians 8:1. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. Isaiah, your knowledge have warped you. Allah. Should we pursue or should we not pursue? It seems like irsi al hal, you know what I mean? Should we or should we not? What do you think? It depends what kind of knowledge you're pursuing. Truth versus falsehood. And it also depends on not only the quality of knowledge, but the intent thereof. Why are you pursuing knowledge? To flex your intellectual muscles or for you to glorify God? So, knowledge, for you to pursue knowledge, this is important. You have to have something before and something after. Okay? Knowledge must be, must have something before and something after. What must be a prerequisite to pursuing the knowledge of the truth? Yes. Think virtues that will help you pursue the truth and not to be prideful of the knowledge you're attaining. I gave you the answer now, implied in the words. Humility. Humility. That is a prerequisite to pursuing knowledge. Knowledge must have a good soil for it to grow. Listen to these verses. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. What does that mean? The fear of the Lord, humility. Whoever loves instruction, who loves instruction? Those who are humble. Add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge. What virtue? The virtue of humility. And here you go. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Basically, the scriptures is full of verses that says, before you pursue knowledge, pursue it with what? Humility. If you pursue it with humility, knowledge will lead you to the truth. Now, what should come after knowledge? That's the prerequisite. Before. إيه بقى المفروض يجي after knowledge? Is it just filling my mind with information? I'd be like another Google search engine. Yes, through what? My knowledge. Knowledge needs to be translated into wisdom. I love what you said. Love it. I love it. Through wisdom. And that is the application of the knowledge of the truth. If you want to just define wisdom, Sophia, wisdom is the application of that which I know. That's it. So for you to pursue knowledge, what's the prerequisite? Humility. What's the fruit? Wisdom. That's it. And that's the plant that I'll share with you. Where is the plant? Here you go. It's like a little plant that you're planting. You must have good soil for this plant to grow and to flourish. That good soil is the soil of humility. And this plant is useless unless it gives what? Fruit. That fruit is the fruit of wisdom. So knowledge must be protected by humility and wisdom. And that is the purpose of science. And glory be to God forever and ever. Amen. Any questions that you guys have on? I hope this was helpful to yani, show you the relationship between Christianity and science. Yeah, and I want to be respectful to your time, Alish. Oh, you have some questions. Okay, excellent. Before I look at these questions, I want to see if you have any questions that you can ask out loud. Yes. Yeah, hold on عشان نسمعك كلنا. Yes, go ahead.
So like,
What's your name?
Marie,
Marie.
what is your purpose? Because I'll explain. Because like, unfortunately, we have found ourselves that like everyone has their own subjective truth, and nobody really is willing to listen to anyone else. So like, when you go, what are you hoping to achieve?
Excellent question. Why are you assuming that no one is willing to listen to anyone else?
Because like,
Have you searched the minds of every audience?
no, I mean, I guess maybe I'm generalizing, but like, the thing is like, what I've seen especially like, because like, me personally, I like I like politics and I like identity. And I've been like listening and watching a lot of stuff. Like I was watching the "What Is a Woman"
Sure.
thing by
Matt Walsh.
I was
Mhm.
like, and everybody's like, as long as it's their truth, so why not?
Sure.
As long as, so like, I wonder like it's so hard to like, it's so hard to disprove something such as like even like self-identification. How do you do that when you
Right.
like something was so big? Such as
Marie,
God?
let me tell you from experience. You would be amazed and surprised to see how hungry the minds of college students are for the truth, especially in this day and age. And I'm not exaggerating again. You go on a college campus and you speak about relevant subjects like religion and faith. Like, is there truth? Is truth absolute or relative? Is it subjective or objective? And if you speak philosophically, with reason, with conviction, and with respect, then you will have an audience that will actually, you'd be surprised and amazed at how many people would come and follow up and say, I want to learn more. I want to delve deeper. I want to do this and do that. If you speak on a college campus from a condescending perspective, holier than thou, I have the truth, let me tell you a bunch of ignorance what you need to know, then of course nobody's going to want to listen.
Yeah.
But if you speak passionately and compassionately with respect, people are willing to have a discourse, especially about the matters that are essential in life. And I'm amazed, you would be amazed too. You can come with me on some of those college tours and you'll see how hungry people are for the truth. Hungry, and I mean they're striving to find that which matters most in their lives, because they tried all the other stuff and they realized that they're left emptier than before. They need something more substantial. So that's why.
I mean, I guess because it's become so like. This is also because of like, it's also because of like, you know, like because of the media and so on. So like, you can't tell if people.
Yeah.
And then like, when you like, at least for me, whenever I'm like watching the news, it's like so unfortunate, and you're like, oh God, there's no hope. It's the end of the world,
Right.
and so on.
Well, if you watch Fox and CNN and all of that, that's, you know, that's not Christian apologetics.
I understand. I mean, I'm saying like generally, like when you're
Right.
listening to like, I don't know, like Minnesota when like they just became like the sanctuary state for like gender affirming caring,
Yeah.
and you feel like, oh, this is getting worse. It's not getting better. So what's the point?
Well, let me tell you something. What are you called to be, Marie, as a Christian? A what to the world? And how can light shine in a world that has no darkness? It can only shine in darkness, because if there is light outside, you will not shine. But if there's darkness outside, you will shine. Now the question is, do you think that there's darkness in this world? Enough said. You're called to shine. And that is a calling that you have to do. As a Christian, you are, you know what does light do? Two things, amongst many other things. Light gives sight. We are in this church, and this church, if the lights are out, you can have 20/20 vision. Will you see anything? Light gives sight. What does light also do? It gives life. And if you study biology, you'll know that. And you are called the light of this world, which means you are called to be the sight for the blind, the spiritually blind, the life for the spiritually dead in this world. That's what you're called to be, every one of us. So if you have the opportunity to shine your light, and it's not really yours, it's Christ's light. You're only what? Reflecting it. What a privilege that is. It's not a duty, it's a privilege. And you'll feel the blessings and the grace of God within your heart when you do that. Yes, you had a question, Clara. Sorry.
I was debating not asking it because it's really unrelated. But like philosophers, a lot of them, they don't believe in God. At least the one I've read. So what do you say to like that? Because a lot of philosophy comes from like morals and like wisdom and stuff like that. So you search in the world for the answers, and like sometimes they will look to the Bible for like answers and stuff like that because it has good sources. But they don't believe in God.
I'd say the same thing as I said for science. By the way, philosophy is the foundation of science. That's just a statement that's a factual proposition. So I say the same thing as I said for scientists. Philosophers who ironically are pursuing wisdom, because that's the love of wisdom, philosophia, are probably pursuing something else. Maybe self-exaltation, maybe other things than wisdom. Because if you're really searching for wisdom and you love it as a philosopher, you will find God. Just like the same, just as I said with scientists. They probably brought their bias into their philosophy studies.
So like I read probably like book 1 from the Republic of Socrates, or the trial and the death of him. And so in the trial and the death, like the apology or whatever, he said that one of his like convictions was that he didn't believe in like religion, and he was like, I mean, he doesn't not believe in it, but it's like he was saying he doesn't at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's a well-known philosophist.
Right, yeah. And that's, again, because, see, one philosopher said, who became a Christian, he said, it's not the lack of evidence, it's the suppression thereof. It's not that there are not enough evidence in the world. It's that I don't want to see the evidence. I'll tell you a story. John, I told you the story as we were driving in. I'll tell you a story. And probably will, يعني, let me know if you need to finish عشان ما أطولش عليكم. My time is 6:20, so I can be here for a while, because I'm 3 hours behind. Here's the story, true story. So I was at a conference with His Grace Bishop Yusuf in Titusville, in Florida. And we were doing a conference, ma'abad, and then one of the students from Florida came to us, me and Sayyidna, and she said, George, Sayyidna, my professor in college, he's Hindu, and he's been exploring Christianity, and he wants to convert to Christianity. And he wants to talk to one of you guys, one of you, Mish guys. Sayyidna was there. So would you be willing? What do you think we say? Of course, we'd love to. So she gave us his contact information. Sayyidna and I contacted him, and we listened to his story and his قاعد بقى يحكي for an hour or so. And at the end of the hours, we said, okay, seems like you're really searching for the truth, and you want to know the true God. Here is an exercise that we're going to give you. But promise, you do it as we tell you. Deal, ماشي. Before you go to bed, get on your knees for just a few minutes and genuinely, underscore this word, genuinely and authentically, pray and say, God, whom I don't know, but I would like to know. Reveal yourself to me one way or another. Just show me who you are. I want to know you. I want to pursue the truth and worship the true God. And once you reveal yourself to me, I'm all in. And say this prayer genuinely for 7 days or 5 days, I forget how many days, and then we're going to follow up with you. Are you willing to do so? He said, absolutely. We left. We were so excited, Sayyidina and I, and then a week passes, and then we reach out to him. Professor so-and-so, have you done what we have told you to do? And he said, no. We said, why? And then he said, I was afraid if I do that, I will find him. So what does that tell you? It's not that there's no evidence for God, it's that we don't want God to exist. Because if we realize the existence of God, we're going to have to what? You said it beautifully. Oh, someone said it. You said it beautifully. You're going to have to change your lifestyle. You're going to have to modify a lot of things. You're going to have to do this and this and this and that. And you feel like, you know what? You don't want him to exist. There's a verse in the scriptures, you can look it up, John 3:19, that says, this is the condemnation, that the light has come to the world, and men loved darkness more than the light, because their deeds were evil. هذه هي الدينونة إن النور قد جاء إلى العالم وأحب الناس الظلمة أكثر من النور لأن أعمالهم كانت شريرة. So it's not this. It's not that I can't see God or I don't believe in God. Is that I don't want to believe in God. I'll tell you another story. I was in a state not too far from here, and a mother comes to me and says, my son who's been a shammas, who servant, who حافظ التسبيحة, all of it, he left the church and he doesn't believe in God anymore. Please come and sit with him. And I was actually there, and coincidentally her son was there. So I talked to him, and of course before you talk to someone about God or anything, you have to first establish a relationship, or else in one ear out the other. So we talked about football, we talked about whatever. So we established some kind of relationship, and then we went to Starbucks, and then we had a conversation. At the end of an hour conversation, you know what he said? And I'm telling you exactly what he said. He said, George, listen, it's not that I don't believe in God. I don't want to believe in God. I said, why? X. He said, because I now live with my girlfriend, and I'm not ready to break up with her. I said, wow, I appreciate and admire your honesty. At least you're honest. It's not that I don't believe that God exists. It's that this is my lifestyle. Once I come back to the church, and I cannot live a double life. So I will love my girlfriend, and I want to, live with her and do whatever I want to do with her. I can't do both. So what do? So you see, and I see repeatedly, I come across circumstances like that. People don't want to believe in God, not that they cannot fathom God. Does that make sense to you all? Yes, حبيبي. ما قلتش حاجة أنت النهاردة خالص.
Sorry, yeah. We have like a lot of time. Bishoy.
بشوي برضه حبيبي.
Yeah. We have a lot
كان
of,
في بشوي برضه. Yes. Yeah. وفي 5 مينا. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bishoy. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, so like we have a lot of time to talk about, all the details about this stuff. Like when I'm in school and like there's like just a kid next to me and we get in like not like an argument, but it's like we get in like sort of like a discussion. I'm not gonna go tell him like, why are you here? You know what I mean? Like I need to tell him something that's like
Yeah.
a little bit simpler.
Yeah. Well, Bishoy, of course, before you say this is apologetics. دي احنا اتكلمنا في الموضوع ده السنة اللي فاتت extensively. How do you shine your light? Back to what I was saying to Marie. How do you shine the light that's within you to others? You're not gonna come and say, I've seen this on college campuses, turn or burn. I've seen this and I've heard this. If you don't come to God today, you're gonna burn in hell. That's not Christianity. دي حاجة تاني. So first of all, as I said earlier, we have to establish what? A relationship. There's something called relational apologetics. It's okay. Doing apologetics through establishing a relationship. Why? Because when you establish a relationship, now your friend or your colleague, they will trust you. You will become more credible to them. You see? So that's number one. Number two, I would pray and say, God, use me in whatever capacity you can. I am a student, use me. I am in my office, use me. And that's what I do. Because God will give you the opportunity to shine your light. Because you know what? He loves those people more than you do, because He died for them and you didn't. So He wants to use you to bring His lost children to the Father's house. So say, Isaiah said that. عارف عشعياء قال إيه؟ ها أنا ذا رب إيه؟ مين يقول الآية؟ مين قال ارسلني? Beautiful. Yes. Here I am, O Lord, send me. Say that, and He will have pave the way for you to shine that light. Practically speaking, that's the foundation. Practically speaking, don't say much. And I agree with Marie that people don't want to be told what to believe in. And if you have kids, you'll know what I mean. They don't want to be told what to do. Ask them questions and just walk away. Let them think of their assumptions and their convictions. Make them a little uncomfortable. Ask questions. And when you ask questions, you will show that you're interested in what they believe in. You will remove their faulty assumptions. And you will know what the real barrier is. Is it something in their mind, something in their heart, something in their will? So ask questions. You just have to know what questions to ask in a compassionate, loving, respectful way. Because St. Peter said, always be ready to give a defense to those who ask you for the reason of the hope that is in you. And he said at the end, with meekness and fear. بِوَدَاعَ وَخُوفٍ. So this is Christian apologetics.
Thank you. It's just because one of like my really good friends, he actually like both of his parents are atheists, but he actually like bought a Bible, and he's actually like he wants to like learn about it.
Great.
So I'm trying to help him, but it's just, I don't want to go up to him and be like, you know, this preacher or whatever.
No. Don't. Preaching.
Yeah.
You can just say, if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to clarify. That's it. And again, we want to avoid the holier than thou kind of approach. That's not how you bring people to the Lord. Yes.
So actually, no, it's okay. So actually, last year you said something that I actually agree with it. You said, be careful when you speak to people because it could affect you.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask, because I feel like I get it from different people. And we start talking about God somehow, and I love it. But sometimes I'm afraid if I'm harming them or if they're harming me. So how do you know when to?
Beautiful. So if you are not anchored in your faith, here's my advice to you. Zip it. That's a blanket statement. If you are not firmly anchored in what you believe in, don't engage in conversations, because you're playing with fire. You're at risk, because you're going to be dealing with people that are very intelligent and eloquent and charismatic, and they know what to say, when to say it, and how to say it, and so on. And if you're not sure of what you believe in, forget it. So what do? Do we just avoid talking to people? No. What do? We study our faith. We learn not only what we believe, but why we believe what we believe. That's why we have conferences like these conferences, to study more about our faith, so that when we have conversations, we speak with love, respect, and meekness. I agree with you 100%. Okay, it's 9:30, so I think we're all expired. Okay, so let's regroup. God willing, زي ما قلت لكم بكرة we have liturgy. Oh yeah, and the first talk at 11 o'clock, it's going to be God in the Old Testament, and it's a very important discussion, and I hope to see you all, God willing, tomorrow. Thank you again for your time, and may God bless you.
Thank you. Hey everyone. So we have a bonfire ready outside. So we're gonna just bring out the food, and it's gonna be around the bonfire. And if I know it is a bit cold, so if you do want to come back inside and hang out, you can. But you can stand outside the fire as well. So we'll bring. Some people are nodding so heavily. But please take a look at the schedule, because we do have early liturgy tomorrow. So please pay attention to the schedule. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. George. Thank you so much.
Your servant, George.